Hey, this is Matt with Luke 923 Ministries, and I'm sitting next to my good friend Tom Bernardo in San Clemente, California. Did I say that right?
You know, it's funny. The people who live here say San Clemente, even though it's
Clemente?
supposed to be the Spanish-sounding thing. The locals actually say San Clemente.
All right.
Go figure.
Hey, Tom just wrote an awesome book, and I want to tell you all about it. I want him to tell you all about it. But before we do, Tom, will you tell us about you? Tell us so we can have some context to the book.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from the East Coast, now live on the West Coast, but in between, I was in ministry for my earliest days, and I was a youth pastor, and I was but then I got the itch to church plant, and there's a lot that goes behind that, and got what got me in a position where I thought I could church plant, learn some lessons. I've planted a couple of churches. I now work for the Fellowship of Evangelical Churches, directing church planting in the Western U.S. and doing some pastoral development too. But most of my experience that is reflected in there has to do with being a church planter.
All right.
Yeah.
And you've been here for how long?
I've been where we are now for 3 years. I had, before that, 21 plus years in Columbus, Ohio, where we planted. Also planted out here on the West Coast back in the 90s.
Awesome. Well, the book, The Honest Guide to Church Planting, is an absolutely wonderful book. And I think it's wonderful because there is not a single book on the market like it that I've ever read. And being a church planter in the past myself, I've read a bajillion church planting books looking for that secret recipe to, get in the church that's booming. And this one really hit a nerve for me because it was like the pain, the brokenness, the hurt that church planters experience just trying to make things work. It just hit me, especially that first chapter. Tell me about that first chapter. That's the truth about you.
Yeah. Well, and some of that comes out from my own experience, which it turns out is a whole lot of our experience. Church planters are a different breed, and what we don't say about that is that the seed of being a church planter has just a whole lot of arrogance involved in it. We're just really arrogant. I guess if you think that you can do something new and you can do something pioneering, you got to have a lot of self-confidence, but there's that other side of it, the dark side. And for me, I had been kind of a golden child in ministry from a young age. I'd preached in front of huge crowds. I'd done all kinds of traveling and stuff like that, and I kind of thought I was all that. Even beneath that was a sense of identity that came from seeing fruit in ministry. So it all gets kind of mingled up together, the godly part of it and the fleshly part of it, that can't tell the difference between the two because you just tend to think, look, I'm just serving Jesus. I'm just trying to help you, and you are. Right. But at the same time, you see good things happen and you have people tell you good things about yourself. And for me, that embedded something in my psyche and even in my theology about the blessing of God and being used of God and feeling like I've got something to offer and I've got something that works. And so that leads you to think, well, how about planting a church? Because we could we could give it its own DNA and we could give it its own identity, and we're going to see things happen. In youth ministry, I was preaching to hundreds and thousands of people, and thinking, now I'm going to just do it here to reach a larger group. So you think, well, we're gonna do something better than it's being done in a place where it's not being done, and we're gonna see the same kind of magic happen. And what happened to me, I thought was I didn't know at the time because you don't hear it. All you hear are the success stories, and you don't hear the hundreds and hundreds of other stories that are really more predominant, which is that it doesn't go like you read in the books. It doesn't go like you hear at the conferences. And when it happens to you, it starts to expose something about yourself. And the chapter you're referencing talks about job one that God is going to do that we don't talk about at most of the conferences or in the books has nothing to do with the expansion of the kingdom in terms of lots of people coming to your church. It has to do with something that God's going to He's going to love you enough to do in your own heart. Mm-hmm. And in a very severe mercy, God began to do something in me to expose. And in order to do that, He had to lay waste to a whole lot of what I was doing. And it led to a failure of a church plant, which I found out later is really, really common and really leaves guys decimated and struggling and asking all kinds of questions about themselves and about God and even testing their faith. Some guys some guys who might be looking at this are guys who are really questioning whether God is even there like they thought, or whether their theology is wrong about him, or whether he's left them. I personally just kind of felt like, I felt like God had just withdrawn his anointing, because I was always told, oh, you're anointed. Oh, God is using you. Oh, you're going to do great things for God. And what great things usually means is explosive growth and big church and big impact. That's always what I knew it to be. And when God does that, it feels like he's abandoned you. I mean, completely feels like he's abandoned you. And so what happens is you begin, if you can get to the other side of it without it killing you, you find out that God is doing something really significant inside you, because that's what he does with his instruments. But we don't talk about it.
So what I got in the chapter when I read it, I felt some peace, because I thought, you know what, God allowed me to go through a church plant that unraveled because he was working on me.
Yeah.
And he loved me, and he was putting me back together and kind of sanding some of the rough edges that I had in my own character, and
yeah,
it was wonderful.
And now here's the thing about that, is that you don't see that in the moment.
No.
In the moment, I would have sworn to you that when I was going through the things, and I'm pulling every trick out of my bag of tricks that have always worked, and one by one they're not working, and I'm wondering what's wrong. And so I think I got to work harder, I got to pray harder, I got to trust more. I'm asking God, I'm begging God, show me what's going, what am I supposed to learn here? And in the moment, it was complete silence. I didn't hear anything from him. They always talk about, oh, you know, when you're at the end of your rope, that's when God shows up and he shows you how much you love. And I will tell you that was not the case for me. Mm-hmm. I got to the end of my rope and I fell off the rope, and he still wasn't there. Or at least my perception was that he wasn't there. Now he was, but it wasn't like he came flashing in and said, okay, now you've learned, so now we're going to take you somewhere else. In the moment, it just felt like he had abandoned me. And it's not till later on that you begin to get some perspective on it and say, I wonder if there was something he was doing there that I couldn't tell. I would have sworn to you I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't growing. My faith wasn't growing. I felt like my faith was eroding. Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like to me. And there were times when my wife's faith was the only thing that kept me from just kind of like bailing out completely. But in time, then you'll get retrospect on it. So it doesn't help in those moments to have somebody say, oh, but here's some good truth for you to learn. You don't want to hear it. It doesn't affect you. You just endure it. And later on, if you just don't make some radically bad choices, you begin to see, oh, God was there. He was doing something, but it was a very slow bake in your soul. And that's what he was doing in me. And I think that's what he's doing in a lot of us.
That's awesome. This is such an awesome book. When did you can you walk through, just kind of in a nutshell, how it's written and the motivation behind writing it?
You know, and part of it is it's a labor of love, I guess, because I feel like there's been no voice. I didn't have a voice telling me anything when I was going through this stuff. I didn't have anybody to talk me off a ledge, to say, I thought I was weird. I thought there was something wrong, because I wasn't hearing all I heard in the books, and it was, if you follow a formula, you do it right, you pray hard enough, you work hard enough, you use your gifts, right. you map it out, you can expect certain kinds of outcomes. I didn't have anybody telling me anything else. And I finally said, you know, there needs to be a voice out there that counters all of that, that says, that's great when that kind of stuff happens. It's great when there's explosive growth that happens. It's great when people have what we call success stories. But for the vast majority of us, that's not how it goes. And I wanted to say, okay, somebody needs to tell us. There needs to be a voice that says, this is what it's really going to be like. These are the things that you're not going to be told in all those books or in all those seminars or all the conferences. But this is a reality, so that when it happens to you, you don't find yourself thinking, what's the matter with God? What's the matter with me? What's the matter with the system? So to say, there are things that you can expect to have happen. And when they do, understand this is normal. This is how the kingdom really works. This is how ministry and leadership really works. And it's not nice. It's not easy. It doesn't sell books, frankly. You know, it doesn't get people to seminars. We want to have the 3 steps and the packages and the things that work. But the reality is that the kingdom of God advances very, very slowly. people are fickle. Core groups are fickle. People who come to your church are fickle. You take steps forward and then you take steps back. And I will tell you, in all the years of planting and leading the church that still survived, it never felt like we were getting anywhere if you just looked at a 3-month period. We never felt momentum. We never felt like it was growing. It did, but it never felt like it. And all the things that are in the book are what happened to me. Things like the fact that you start out with a core group of people who say, man, we're all in. And then you realize nobody in that core group is in as much as you're in. They say they are, but then you'll find out that they're not. And then you have to say, what am I going to do with that? Am I going to resent them? Am I going to pressure them? Or is it possible to kind of release that and say, you know what, this is normal, and I can accept what's there, and we can just go at a slower pace. Pace is another thing. That if pace, if you judge it by what you see presented as the people who really know what they're doing, you should start with a core group of X people. You get 20 or 30 people, and then by 6 months in, you got twice that, and by another 6 months in, you got 5 times that. And, you got people saying, well, we're growing slow. We've only got 300 people after 2 years or something like that. And I go, are you kidding me? The vast majority of churches, that's not how it works.
No.
Somebody needs to say that almost invariably, if what I call the lottery winners in there, that there are people who have this explosive growth. And I'm glad for that. But if you really study it, almost all that growth is transfer growth. It's Christians who have come from one place to another, or another church split, or something happened, or they were just at the right place at the right time, and people, a fast growth area, and people just gravitated there. But the majority of what happens is very, very slow, very incremental, doesn't get any attention, doesn't get any headlines. Transformation is a slow process. And if what we really want to have happen is for people's lives to be transformed, not just marking that they prayed a prayer or that they come to your service, but they have been brought from death to life and they're living like followers of Jesus, that doesn't happen fast. Everything the Bible says about it, what Jesus said about it, it's very, very slow. It happens incrementally. We need somebody to tell us that's how your church will grow if you're really doing church planting right. And you're going to have to be patient, and it's going to test you. And at the same time, one of the things we talk about in there is a core group that within 5 years, you can kind of count on it. Everybody from your core group will be gone after 5 years. Now people say, well, there's exceptions to that. But the fact is, that's what happens. People come, and they come in for seasons and they go out for seasons. There's nothing wrong with you if that's your experience. If that happens to you, you're in a good company. There's a big fraternity of people who are experiencing the same thing.
Don't we take it personal when people leave?
I had somebody say to me once, when they were leaving our church, they just kind of on a whim decided to leave. And this happens all the time. Mm-hmm. Again, this is what it's like. I thought, no, that happens to other people who aren't as gifted as me. It happens to people who aren't as compelling as me. Oh no, it happened to me too. It's like, and people say, oh, you know what? Yeah, well, we just decided, they'll use a phrase, we've decided to move on. Okay, or if they really want to play the card, they go, well, we just feel like God is leading us. Well, he may be. Mm-hmm. Or it could just be that they're trying to mask the fact that they've had all the fun they can stand and they're ready to go and try something else. Or somebody opened up a new shop down the way and they want to try it. And when they say that, they'll say, no, don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. And anybody who's playing at church knows. We can say it's about Jesus. We can say it's not about us. But you're the face of it. And when somebody comes and gives you a shot and walks away, you take it personally.
It hurts.
It's devastating. Devastating. So what do you do with that? Where do you go with that? And one of the things I really encourage people to do is, can we stop trying to impress each other? Can we stop trying to go to things and just try to quote what's working? Can we just find a safe place where we can say, okay, this is what it's really like? And I found that, and that's one of the things that kept me alive, frankly, is I found a group of guys who were willing to do that with each other. And I encourage people to say, don't stop until you find other guys, because no one understands what this is like other than other church planters. No one feels it like you feel it. No one can fully enter into it. But if you can find that handful of people that you say, this is really, really the hardest thing I've ever done, and I feel like I'm failing, and I don't know what I'm doing. And you get other guys around and say, us too. I will tell you, one of the analogies I use is like, you see those, you hear these stories or about like some fancy party where everybody's dressed up in tuxedos and fancy stuff, and it's poolside. And then alcohol is usually involved, but eventually everybody winds up in the pool. They just jump in the pool, and it's like, oh, it's a party. Everybody's in the pool in their tuxedos. Well, that looks like fun, but there had to be a moment where one of those people thought it was a good idea to jump in the pool with their tux on, and in that moment, everybody else decided what to do. And if everybody jumps in the pool, it's a party. If no one else jumps in the pool, you're just an idiot in the pool with your tux on. Well, the same thing is true with church planters. Is somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to be willing to say, I'm going to jump in the pool with my tux on and tell you what this is really like, what it really feels like, the fears and the doubts I struggle with. Because, see, you can't do that with your core group. You can't, because they're looking to you to cast vision, and you got to be forward, and all this stuff. But if you get a safe place where you can say, okay, I'm going to jump in the pool with my tux on and just see if anybody else comes in. If you do that, it's a risk. But if you can get an environment where some other people look at it and they respond, sometimes they're just dying for somebody else to show them they're not alone. They'll jump in with you. And when that happens, you have a provision from God that can just protect your soul through the tough times and say, I'm not crazy, I'm not forsaken, I'm not alone, and this is going somewhere. Otherwise, you're really at risk of thinking it's not.
Oh, your book does such a good job nailing that, because when I was going through my church unraveling, I felt ashamed, I felt embarrassed, I felt like, God, why aren't you coming through and helping me with this? And it just hurt. Yeah. I didn't have anyone to share that kind of stuff with. So I'm glad that you've kind of struck a chord with that. When you're writing, I'm curious, and researching, is there anything that, as you were researching, you discovered maybe even more than you thought is true about the church planter and their thinking?
Yeah, there's a number of them. I think one of them is that beyond the thing that we're all arrogant when we start, I think that I discovered that the sense of, and this is true in leadership in general, but especially in pioneering and in church planting, the sense of being alone is so predominant. Because a lot of us who church plant are extroverts, so it looks like we're friendly and we got friends and we got gathering groups. But at the end of the day, there is just a profound sense of being alone and not being understood and feeling weak that is so predominant that I didn't realize until I started talking to a lot of people who said, oh, it's a constant thing. The old joke is that every pastor wants to quit on Monday, right? Every Monday you feel like quitting. Church planters don't wait till Monday. They feel like quitting every day. They don't know where it's going, and they feel like they're trapped so often because, again, so much of church planting is constantly casting vision. It's constantly telling people and think about what this could be. You do that all the time. It's so much. You have to be so aggressive in reaching lost people, and you want to never lose that, but especially it's true in the early days. And you walk away from that, and you just say, I don't have any friends. I don't have anybody who understands me. And we turn to our wives, but one of the things I learned, one of the things I learned is that so many of us lean way, or on our spouse, we lean way too heavily on our spouse. And my wife told me, she said, I love you, I'm for you, but I can't be your co-pastor. I'm not. There are some people who do that.
Yeah.
But she said, I want to build a home for you, but I can't solve your problems for you. And I was just leaning on her because I had nowhere else to go. So that was a huge thing I saw. And I think another thing I saw pretty consistently was that we've kind of bought what I call the cottage industry of church planting, that says, because we do this as Americans, we reverse engineer successful things. We see a model and we say, that works. Okay, let's go back and see what that person did. and let's replicate it, and let's build a system around it, and let's perfect it. And so many of us are guilty, even in networks, of saying we've got a tried and true model, and you don't have to make the same mistakes we make because we've got a model that works. And so it's well-meaning people who say work the plan, work the plan, work the plan, and guys are trusting of that, and they say, well, these guys know what they're doing, so I'm going to work the plan. And they're set up for severe disappointment. A lot of depression hits as a result of saying, I worked the plan to a T, and I don't know why I'm not getting the same results. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a disservice to guys, and I think that so many guys are struggling with that because they've been, frankly, fed a misconception that says, right, this is how God works. Now, all we have to do is open the Bible, and you look at the character of God, and you see how God has never. I mean, not only does he not prescribe plans and systems at work, he seems like he takes offense to people trying to script how he works, and just presume, do the same thing the same way over and over again, and God works. When that happens, it becomes more about the plan, and it's not about his spirit, it's not about his character. And God purposefully, I think, it's all through the Old Testament, he keeps changing up the plan. He keeps saying, do it differently this time, fight differently, pray differently, serve differently, because he realizes, he wants us to realize, this is not about us finding a system that works. This is about us being dependent on him and being faithful to him. So I think that church planters and church planting industries have inadvertently created something that runs counter to the character of God by saying, we got the plan, just work the plan. I found that what I say in here is that it never goes by the book, except for the book that you write about your own story after it's done. And then book won't help anybody else because it's just your story. So this is the point. Like you said, there's lots of books on church planting. Most of them are books about how to do it. This is not a how to do it book. This is saying, look, come up with a plan. Think about the best plan and understand it's not going to work. I mean, it will work a little bit, but you're going to have to always change it. You're always going to have to, because God is going to create your own journey. He's going to let you have an experience that's not like any other. And that's part of the wonder of this thing. When you see God change lives, he uses stuff that you never could have scripted. Like some strange thing comes out of nowhere. And that's what winds up being the main thing that you do, or the main more effective thing that happens. The more we can unlearn what we've been taught about the plan works, just work the plan, the more ready we'll be to say, hold it loosely, have a plan, but then let God do something different.
That's like Jesus in the Gospels, how many times he used different ways of healing people.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, one time he's rubbing mud on a guy's eyes. Another time he's sticking his fingers in a guy's ears. Another time he's saying, well, just go report to the priest. Or sometimes he'll just say, well, just rise and walk, go home. And if you're taking notes on him and say, how do you do the healing ministry, Jesus? You can go, well, the last time we put the fingers thing in the ears and you go walk around putting your fingers in. It's not going to work. People are going to think you're an idiot. So the whole, everything Jesus did in his own ministry to change people's lives, he varied it. He showed it. This wasn't about the mechanism. It was about the heart of God manifesting himself in a way that leaves you saying, God did this.
Yeah.
God did this. That's all it is. And we give him the credit.
And it's so important when we're doing that, the formulas. I mean, okay, there's some guys that have done some really cool and smart, wise things to planning church. But really, when it comes down to it, it's our relationship with Jesus. Yes. And so why don't you share a little bit of what... I had a friend of mine say, I don't want to be the church planting guy. I want to be the guy who's in love with Jesus. And I thought that was such good advice. And how does that work for a church planter?
Yeah. Well, I think that it works by, first of all, I honestly don't know if it fully works until you fail on some level. Because until you fail on some level, you're probably always going to think, if I just tweaked that, if I just did that differently, then I'll see better success. So if you're in the middle of a failure, see that as the surgical instrument of God. Awesome. to work on your heart first and say, okay, This is a gift to you. This failure is a gift to first of all, to get you to stop, to drop the instruments you're using first. Now, that doesn't mean you don't use instruments, but it just means you've been holding on them tightly, you've been practicing wielding them, and recognize that you need to let that go. And then you present yourself to God. This is what happened to me when I was completely left on the side of the road bleeding from my first church plant experience. And somebody came to me and said, I'd like it's the guys from the Fellowship of Evangelical Churches. It's part of the reason I work in church planting with them now, is because the president of that group came to me and said, we're looking for guys who can plant churches. I want to talk to you. And I was like, why would you want to talk to me? I'm 0 for 1. And I don't know what I'm doing. I thought I knew what I was doing. And he said, that's what I want.
Down the line.
I want somebody whose heart has been opened up and who realizes they can't trust themselves. You're at just the right place to see God do something with you now. And I did not feel like it, and it sounds nice now, but it was a real risk for them, and I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. So then you start to say, okay, so, and what's funny is that, I had a model the first time I planted. It didn't work at all. And then I rethought it from a whole different perspective. And it was no longer about how do I get X number of people in my core group? How do I get a viable number of people at my launch? How do I launch large? All the stuff that you kind of tend to hear. It was more about how do I bring the heart and the life of Jesus just into proximity with other people. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that. If I can just get in front of people and just present to them who he is to me, would that be enough? It doesn't seem like it's enough because I've been told I got to do all these other things. Now again, you need to have a plan, but the part of that is coming, it starts with your heart, not your hands or your head. Most of us were taught to start with our hands and our head. Yeah. And then, of course you bring the heart too, but to really say, I'm going to be somebody in front of these people first. I'm going to care like Jesus cares, regardless whether they come to my church or my event, or I'm going to love them because they are image bearers of God and they're far from him, and they could have life and they don't know it yet. And if I just present that to them and just be around them, then I can start to introduce ideas about gatherings they could come to, or things they could attend, or places they could be, so that it's just a natural expression of the key thing, which is I have been found by somebody who loves me in the heart, and he loves you too, and I just want you to get a taste of that. If you can just walk away from this just getting a taste of that, that's all I want.
That's so good, Tom. That's so good.
It runs contrary. I mean, we all say it's true, but it runs contrary to what most of us. There's less tangible about that. So most of us want to just find the tangible stuff. Yeah, that's all good, but I want to preach. Yeah, that's all good, but I want to start this thing, or I want to have killer worship, or I want to do this stuff. But if we can just start with our heart and say, let it go from there, then let God build a structure as it comes from that. It makes all the difference.
You mentioned earlier about the need to have people in our lives as church planners that we can actually share what's going on in our heart with, the pain and the hurt and how we're really feeling. We can't really do that to a core team sometimes because of not wanting to jade them and poison them. Tell us about this FEC network and Synergy Church Planning. Tell us about that and what you found in that and what has drawn you to that, and maybe why some guys that are watching should consider that if they're not part of a network yet.
Right. Well, I mean, I found some guys early on who were the guys who jumped in the pool with me. But then what I found by being part of a group that they weren't just about seeing how much money you could get. They weren't just about trying to get the best system. They were about doing this in fraternity with each other. I found in the Fellowship of Evangelical Churches and the Synergy Church Planning Network, it feels like it's a little bit contrarian to some of what you see in some of the places. And that's not to disparage other groups. I have friends across the church planting world, and they love Jesus and they're doing great stuff. But what I found in this group was a group of guys who said our starting point for being together was we want to be men after God's own heart. We want to present ourselves to Him together and say we're going to have each other's backs. We're going to create a safe environment for each other. We're going to be a place where there's not pressure on each other to see how quickly we can perform or what the competition is like. Am I doing as well as you? We're going to be people who kind of expect it to be hard and messy. We're not going to accept it. If I come to you and you ask me how it's going, I go, oh man, it's going great. You're not going to go, oh, that's terrific. You're going to say, yeah, I don't believe you. Not that it's not going great in some ways, but I know that you've got feet of clay. I know you're always struggling with something. I know there's something that's eating at you, and I'm not going to leave here until I know what that is. I want to give you a place where you can say it, you can accept it, and we can walk through that together. That was what was unique about this group of guys. They said, that's what we want first and foremost. And we'll celebrate the great victories. I mean, we like nobody will celebrate because we'll realize, oh, it's such a gift and it's so rare when it happens. But we will also celebrate the heartache. As weird as that sounds. We're going to celebrate that when the tough times are going, that God is still being faithful and you're being faithful. And we're going to celebrate you to say, you know, man, you are a rock star to God right now. Because He's choosing to let you go through stuff that's doing surgery on your soul. That's a privileged place. And we want to be there with you with that as much as... And that makes the victories or the positive things all the more sweet to experience together. That's the kind of fraternity that Church Planting Network should have. So it's
awesome.
It's so much more than just what we produce. It's who we are and what God's producing in us.
So if there's a guy out there watching right now, where can he find out about, first of all, FEC, Fellowship of Evangelical Churches, right. And then how can we get this way cool book in people's hands?
Yeah, well, fecministries.org is our website. And we also have the Synergy Church Planting Network, and at synergychurchplanting.com is a place, that's an entry point for guys who are interested in saying, boy, I'd love to find a network of guys who that's what's true of them, you know. And I'll tell you this, again, this is just one more thing. You know, there's so many places they've got quotas and they got deadlines and they got structure and there's pressure. And in the Synergy Church Planting Network, we say, no, we're about you first. And if this takes longer than it seems like it should, we're not going to bail out on you. We're not going to pressure you. We're going to let God go at your own pace. But that's where the conversation starts. It just starts with the conversation. And we're all about relationship first. You know, we're not just about hoops to get you through. But synergychurchplanting.com is a place where you can just put in and say, hey, this is who I want to be. You guys interested in a dialogue? We start that dialogue, and then we'll walk through the process of just getting to know each other and finding out where your heart is and finding out what tools you've got and which ones you don't have, and saying where is God stirring you to do something to plant a church, whether it's out of another church or to parachute drop somewhere. You know, you've got to help you discern what's going on with that, and then walk you through the steps of saying this is not just putting a plan together, but this is a process of you being the right person, finding the right place, and then having a plan that you know we hold very loosely to. As far as the book, it's out by Zondervan. You can go to honestguide@churchplanting.com. It's got a site, Amazon, any of the booksellers. You can look under the Honest Guide to Church Planting, and it's available there.
That's awesome, Tom. I know it's going to be a book that impacts a lot of people, so thank you for writing it.
Absolutely.
And
it's an honor to.
I kind of hear a vibe of book number 2 coming, so we look forward to that. Hey, but this is Matt with Luke 9:23 Ministries. We want to help you get started with a church plant. So if you're at that beginning stage and you need someone to help you with the articles, with the 501c3, with payroll, with bookkeeping, with all that stuff, web design, we would love to help you. You can check out our website at luke923ministries.org. Hey, it's been a joy to sit here with my good friend Tom, and this book again is The Honest Guide to Church Planting. Thanks for listening.